Good evening. The game you're about to see is the most stupid, appalling, disgusting and disgraceful exhibition of football possibly in the history of the game. Chile versus Italy. This is the first time the two countries have met. We hope it will be the last. The national motto of Chile reads, by reason or by force. Today, the Chileans were prepared to be reasonable. The Italians only used force. And the result was a disaster for the World Cup. Now, if the World Cup is going to survive in its present form, something's got to be done about teams that play like this. Indeed, after seeing the film tonight, you at home may well think that teams that play in this manner ought to be expelled immediately from the competition. Just see what you think.
Welcome, friends, to part 2 of my history of the World Cup series. For this video, we are going to start off with a banger. The 7th World Cup held in 1966 in Chile. Just like last video, I'm going to donate $1 for every view up to 500 to Soccer Without Borders. So, let's get into it. While this was one of the least fabled and lowest scoring World Cups, it was also one of the most violent and actually had a match that led to the creation of yellow and red cards. Yes, the infamous match between Chile and Italy, known as the Battle of Santiago, was refereed by Ken Aston, who later went on to invent bookings after punches were thrown and police intervention was required 4 times. I'll note that while players were sent off before, the concept of a visual card came about later, partially due to what the refs saw in this match. When I say punches were thrown, these weren't like light hits. For example, Chilean outside left Lionel Sanchez broke Humberto Maggio's nose with a left hook punch, but English referee Ken Aston did not notice the foul as he was busy telling Giorgio Farini to leave the field after he was sent off in the 8th minute and refused to leave the pitch. Police had to drag him off. Sanchez was violent again when he slapped Italian right back Mario David in the face in retaliation for being fouled seconds earlier. The linesman was only a few meters away, but Sanchez escaped punishment again. When David attempted to kick Sanchez in the head a few minutes later, he was sent off. The two teams engaged in scuffles and spitting, and police had to intervene 3 more times. Chile won the match 2-0, but why was there such bad blood? Well, there were 2 Italian reporters who talked mad shit on Chile as a country, saying it was a poor, malnourished, alcoholic, and backwards country, which is pretty messed up considering they had a severe earthquake 2 years prior. Chilean newspapers fired back, describing Italians in general as fascists, mafiosos, oversexed, and drug addicts. Anyway, Chile were eventually knocked out in the semifinal by Brazil, who did not use the dark arts and were the best prepared team once again, like in 1958, which, if you saw part 1, you'll remember was when Pele introduced himself to the world. While he was regarded as the best in the world for this tournament, he unfortunately picked up an injury and could not play after the second game. Though, he did score a brilliant goal against Mexico. So, with Pele injured, it was time for Garrincha to shine. While you remember him as a pacey winger in 1958, in 1962 he was an all-rounder. Strong in the air, great with both feet, he scored from headers and with his weaker foot. Though he was the star of the team, Brazil actually did not need a goal from him in their final 3-1 win against Czechoslovakia to win the tournament. On to the famous 1966 World Cup, which English fans will know as their first and only World Cup win. It was also hosted by them. This would be the 3rd time since the first 2 World Cups in Uruguay and Italy that the hosts won. This is also the first time North Korea and Portugal took part in the World Cup. Fun fact, North Korea actually beat Italy in the opening rounds and knocked them out. managed by former right back Alf Ramsey, who was picked as manager due to his success with taking Ipswich up 3 divisions and eventually winning the title. England, interestingly, largely did not use wingers throughout the tournament, unlike Brazil in 58 and 62. They even had their center forwards taking throws in the final. As for players, Jimmy Greaves was the greatest goal scorer in the English top flight history, but he had to drop out due to injury. So Liverpool's Roger Hunt was up top instead. Not a bad choice to have. Ramsey emphasized disciplined work ethic, and everyone in the team displayed this, from keeper Gordon Banks to what most consider the best player on the team, Bobby Charlton. As with every World Cup, this also had some controversy, particularly in the final between England and West Germany, who went ahead. England tied it up though with a Hurst header off a free kick from Moore. England then took the lead, but it went to extra time after Weber equalized in the penultimate minute. Now, here's where the controversy occurs. Hurst smashed the ball against the bar. It bounced down onto the line and then out. Many say it's unlikely the ball crossed the line, but the goal was given by linesman Tofik Bahramanov. Though England did score a fourth, that too was controversial due to the fact that fans started storming the pitch after seeing the ref put his whistle to his mouth. Regardless, England went on to win it for the first and only time. Many say this win was, quote, the worst thing that could have happened to English football, unquote, because it convinced them to knuckle down and focus on hard running over talent. "1970 was hosted in the high and hot Mexico and features what many consider the most celebrated World Cup winning side in history, being Brazil. 66 was quite bad for Brazil as they were eliminated in the group stage. Pele even briefly retired, but he came back for one last dance. With a military dictatorship in place in Brazil, Pele said the team felt they had to win it. Some fun facts: this was the first World Cup to feature substitutes, the first for yellow cards, the first to be globally broadcasted, and the first to be hosted in North America. It featured legends such as Franz Beckenbauer, Gerd Müller, Bobby Moore, Teofilo Cubillas, and Gordon Banks, who made one of the greatest saves ever. Former Brazilian player and World Cup champion Mario Zagallo managed the team to victory and became the first man to win the World Cup as a player and a manager. Being close to the players, he would actually take suggestions on tactics from them. He kept the 4-2-4 formation, but avidly used 5 world-class attackers. These were Pele, Tostão, Rivellino, Jairzinho, and Gerso. Though Brazil had plenty of quality going forward, they weren't secure at all defensively. Piazza was a central defensive midfielder who had to play central back. The captain, Carlos Alberto, was a little shaky too, but not nearly as much as the goalkeeper Felix, who made bad errors. While Pele is the king of the World Cup, Brazil's key player in this tournament was Jairzinho, who managed to score in all 6 games. However, Zagallo actually claimed that Gerson, who was a bit of a partier and a smoker, was the best number 10 that he'd ever seen in his life. Brazil faced Italy in the final, and with both being on 2 World Cup wins, the original Jules Rimet trophy was to be permanently awarded to whoever won the third. But the final was a bit of a blowout, with Brazil winning 4-1. Italy did their best to stunt Brazil's beautiful play, but they scored probably the most famous team goal in football. Pele received the ball and to wait for the run of Carlos Alberto, then nonchalantly slipped him in with what many say is the greatest team goal, or the perfect goal, if you will. So yes, Brazil was unstoppable this tournament, but aside from beautiful football winning, this World Cup was also a catalyst for football entering the global zeitgeist. Before, it was a bit niche financially, But after being shown to millions around the world, FIFA products became big moneymakers, licensed throughout the World Cup cycle. The Azteca, where the final was played, became one of football's legendary temples, and players became superstars. The 1974 World Cup in West Germany is a little overlooked, but there are some unique things about it. For one, Scotland became the first undefeated team to exit, having beaten Zaire, which was the first country to compete from sub-Saharan Africa, and drawing with Yugoslavia and Brazil, which is a valiant effort. Another is that the final between Netherlands and West Germany was the first to feature a penalty. Even with players like Wolfgang Overath, Gerd Müller, and Franz Beckenbauer, West Germany weren't favorites because they didn't really play the open football that Brazil played in 1970. It was more cautious and organized. They almost didn't play, actually, due to an issue with bonuses, but Beckenbauer convinced the players to take a slightly lower fee. Then there was also a West German upset in a match against local rivals East Germany, which was dear to the manager Helmut Schoen, as he had fled from Dresden in East Germany to West Germany, citing political interference in East German football. Though he was distraught after the loss to East Germany, he saw it as an opportunity to readjust the side, and it also gave them an easier draw going forward with this World Cup, having a second group stage instead of quarters and semis. Basically, West Germany therefore had to finish above Sweden, Poland, and Yugoslavia to reach the final, instead of Brazil, Argentina, and the Netherlands. The star player of this tournament was Franz Beckenbauer, who is considered by many to be the best and most influential defender in football history. Originally renowned as an intelligent midfielder capable of driving forward into attack, Beckenbauer pioneered the role of the attacking sweeper. Of course, the other notable star player was Johan Cruyff from the Netherlands, which was the team West Germany faced in the finals. In the opening moments, before West Germany even got a touch, Cruyff ran into the box and got a penalty, which was put away by Johan Neeskens. But West Germany tied it up with a penalty of their own, which was considered soft in those days, but definite in today's standards. Breitner converted the penalty to make it 1-1. Gerd Müller made it 2-1 before halftime, and actually became the top World Cup scorer with 14 goals until Ronaldo of Brazil overtook him in 2006 with 15, who was then overtaken by Miroslav Klose in 2014 with 16 total World Cup goals. Though some may think, oh, they won off a soft penalty, they did erroneously have a goal chopped off for an offside call that wasn't offside, so it's fair. Others claim that West Germany was a mediocre champion, but Dutch and German club football was quite dominant in the 1970s. Now, onto a sadder World Cup in 1978. When Argentina hosted and won the FIFA World Cup, the country was at the absolute apex of the Dirty War, a campaign of state-sponsored terror led by a military junta under General Jorge Rafael Videla. Out of respect to the 30,000 people who were either murdered or displaced, I'm not going to focus on the football for this World Cup. I'd rather highlight the atrocities that took place. The contrast between the joy inside the stadiums and the violence happening simultaneously just outside them makes 1978 one of the most chilling examples of sports washing in modern history, and the first since fascist Italy's in 1934. The violence was not taking place in far-off provinces. It was happening blocks away from the matches. The primary example of this is the ESMA, aka the Navy School of Mechanics, which the dictatorship had converted into its largest secret detention, torture, and extermination center, just 10 minutes away from the El Monumental Stadium, which was where the final match was played in Buenos Aires. While nearly 75,000 fans were roaring inside the stadium as Argentina advanced, prisoners inside the ESMA were hooded, shackled, and undergoing severe torture via electric shocks. Survivors later recounted that they could clearly hear the stadium's crowd cheering and the goal horns blowing from their cells. The violence was clinical and clandestine. The junta utilized a network of over 340 secret concentration camps. A favored method of execution during this era was the death flights, aka vuelos de la muerte, where prisoners were drugged, stripped naked, loaded onto military aircraft, and thrown alive into the Atlantic Ocean or the Rio de la Plata to ensure their bodies were never found. The Argentine government spent over $520 million to host the tournament, roughly 10% of their national budget at the time. The reason why they did this was twofold. One was to project an image of peace, stability, and order to the world, countering reports of human rights abuses leaking into Western media. The second was domestic distraction. They wanted to manufacture a wave of fierce nationalism that would temporarily blind the public and override political dissent. Despite the attempt to control the narrative, it actually did the opposite. During the tournament, international crews covering soccer matches went into the streets and filmed the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo, broadcasting their pleas to find their disappeared children to millions of viewers worldwide. There was also the football yes, torture no campaigns. In European countries like France and the Netherlands, massive activist groups pushed for a total boycott of the tournament. I will give credit to the Argentine manager Cesar Luis Menotti, who was only 39 and most famous for smoking his way through the tournament. He was a fascinating figure, a committed left-wing philosopher in charge during a period of right-wing military dictatorship. He distanced himself from power while also acknowledging the need to stay on decent terms with the regime. Ultimately, the junta got the sporting glory they desired when Captain Daniel Passarella lifted the trophy on home soil. But beneath the falling confetti in El Monumental lay a brutal police state operating at peak efficiency, using the beautiful game to cloak unspeakable violence. Now on to the 1982 World Cup hosted by Spain. You don't often consider Italy underdogs, but in 1982, they were 18-1 to win. Even their manager, Enzo Berzot, was mocked by media for their poor performances. Though Berzot enjoyed the total football of the previous years, Italy's star player this tournament was Paolo Rossi, who was actually banned for the last 2 years due to the Totonero match-fixing scandal. But Berzot was wise to put his trust in Rossi, who, after a slow start, went on to win the Golden Boot and the Golden Ball. Italy were always the better side in the final against West Germany, having gone up 3-0, until West Germany got a consolation goal. Italy even missed a penalty, so it could have ended 4-1. Many say this was a very negative footballing side in comparison to Brazil's attacking nature, but Italy did beat Argentina, Germany, and Brazil on their way to the trophy. It was just a masterclass in tactics by Berzot, as he had continually made tactical changes and substitutions throughout the tournament. On to the final World Cup for Part 2, 1986. Hosted by Mexico for a second time and won by Argentina for a second time. And yes, this is the tournament that featured the infamous Hand of God incident. This is the definitive World Cup, which was defined by one player, that being Diego Maradona. Manager Carlos Bilardo was smart enough to build the team around Maradona in a 3-5-2 formation, with Maradona largely playing behind two strikers. Uruguay's Miguel Bosio was handed the job in the round of 16 during the Rio de Plata derby, but Maradona produced what he would later say in World Cup stories was, quote, "by far my best performance of the World Cup, because I didn't lose a single 1-versus-1. I got past every Uruguayan player I came up against. I was always in the right place." Maradona is famously and infamously remembered for his display against England in the last eights. The Hand of God incident was a moment when there was a high clearance for the keeper to catch, so Maradona challenged the keeper and knocked it in with his hand, but it was given as a goal. England fans were appalled, Argentines were elated, and the neutrals were shocked. I should note, though, that England played very dirty against Maradona, so maybe they just got what they deserved. But he then went on to score what many say is the greatest World Cup goal ever. Fun fact, Maradona dribbled past 53 players throughout this World Cup. This match was also personal for both English and Argentine fans because of the Falklands War. So Argentina won, and Maradona scored another 2 against Belgium in the next round to move into the finals against West Germany. That was managed by Franz Beckenbauer, who did a good job of getting the team to quiet down Maradona. So Argentina were up 2 goals by the 60th minute in the final, and they were cruising to victory until Germany came back and tied the game up. But you can't really keep Maradona quiet, can you? He slid a through ball to striker Buruchaga and got an assist when he scored. And that is part 2 of the history of the World Cup from 1966 to 1986. Next week, I will be covering the modern era from the resurgence of Brazil to the rise of Spain and France, as well as more sports washing that went down in Russia and Qatar. Enjoy the opening rounds, and as always, I hope you stay blessed and have a lovely week, my friends.